At 17, I was the Finnish champion. At 18, I turned pro. I played Fed Cup for Finland and was ranked in the top 500 WTA. And honestly, I gave my whole life for tennis. But a few years later, I quit and I completely disappeared from the tennis world. This is the real reason I walked away and why I am ready to come back here on YouTube. In this video, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself, who I am, why I started this channel, what you can expect from my channel, and why you should actually listen to me because I do have a lot of expertise in the tennis world. Let's start with how my tennis journey started, how it all started back in the early 2000s. I actually started playing tennis at 6 years old, but I do come from a non-athletic family and I was put into tennis purely to do something after school, to have a good hobby, but the thought of me becoming pro was in no one's mind. And up until around age 12, that was actually it for my tennis journey. I just played a couple of times per week. I had fun. I became fully committed to tennis at age 15, 16, and I actually started training daily and some days even twice a day before school. And my teenage years were definitely very full and very active. My family always supported me in my tennis journey, but it was also very important for them that I would graduate high school, that I would get an education, which is why I didn't really play a lot of junior tournaments. That was pretty much it. But at 16, I knew that this was what I wanted to do with my life, and I was eagerly waiting to turn 18 and start my pro career. So at 18, I graduated and I actually knew exactly what I wanted to do. This was a time where a lot of my peers had big life questions on what to do with their life, where to go on, and I had it all figured out. And I was also very lucky to have my family's full support, not only financially, but mentally, of course. So I started playing full-time on tour, and that's where I started to play on ITF tours. Until 18, I actually trained and lived in Tallinn, Estonia. That's where I was born. After then, I moved to Helsinki and trained there for a couple of months, but Finland is not the biggest tennis country. There weren't a lot of people to practice with, and it was also extremely expensive, so I knew that I had to expand. And then I actually decided to move to Mallorca, where I had my first international kind of tennis experience. I trained with a lot of people. And of course, tennis culture in Spain is very different from the Nordics, at least back at that time. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out with my coach in Mallorca, and I also only ended up staying there for a couple of months. And then I made my first real move to Lisbon, Portugal, where I trained in the professional training center. Not only could I see other tennis athletes, but it was also a place where they had track and field, football, and so many other sports. And that was really where I immersed myself. I felt like a real professional athlete. There were a lot of great opportunities for me to train. The weather was amazing. And that's where I really started to grow as a player and grow my career. And after being there for 3.5 years, I actually moved back to Spain, but into Alicante area. And I trained with amazing coaches, some of them who were active players on tour. And I got a lot of real experience. In Spain was also easier to travel from, again, perfect weather conditions, cheap courts, great conditions to practice. And that's really when I was flourishing and also achieving my best results. Some highlights from these moments would be, of course, winning the Finnish championships at 17. That was when I really started to feel like I could make it and that I was pretty good. In 2017, I was also the female tennis player of the year in Finland, and that gave me a great boost. I felt like I was finally recognized and I got to go to an amazing gala, and it was just really an amazing year for me. In 2017, I actually won my first international titles, both in singles and doubles, and I felt like I was just going and progressing in the right direction, and it was very motivational, and I just loved my life at the time. And the highlight in 2017 was playing Fed Cup back at home in Helsinki, where I could really play in front of the home crowd. We had an amazing team feeling. The girls were, very supportive, and I just absolutely loved it. We got to do a lot of interviews. I've always loved being in front of the camera. And of course, playing in front of the home crowd was an amazing highlight. During those years, I reached my highest ranking in the WTA Tour, 534 in singles and 419 in doubles. But of course, as every athlete knows, athlete life is not all flowers and roses, and there were definitely a lot of struggles that I also want to point out. First of all, even though I had amazing coaches, I was not really able to afford traveling with them full time. I did have them join me once in a while, but generally I traveled a lot alone. I felt lonely, and I definitely felt like I was missing out on the support that I crucially needed. I mean, I was only 22, 23. So that was quite rough on me mentally. Tennis is also emotionally a very tough sport because you do play by your own. You don't really have a team to rely on. So if you have a bad day, that also, of course, reflects on you mentally. Honestly, out of so many players every week, there is only one ultimate winner. So you do have to deal with a lot of losses. Emotionally, that was really tough for me to overcome. I was also missing my family. I was missing a lot of family milestones, birthdays, celebrations. And as a big family person, that was, of course, weighing on me. Around 2018 was actually when I started to have problems with my shoulder. I was still playing full-time on court, but I started to feel pain, and there were matches that I couldn't play with my full power anymore. My shoulder injury was really the biggest struggle that I had to deal with by the end of my career. I was doing a lot of cortisol shots that were helping me temporarily, but they didn't give me any lasting results. And I was needing to get an operation, which would still not guarantee, full recovery. And that is when I really started seeing the end of my career and when I had to think what comes next in my life. And of course, not having enough sponsors was also very, very tough. Finland, like I mentioned, is not the biggest tennis country, so there's not a lot of companies supporting tennis players. Why I say Finland, even though I was born in Estonia, I have a Finnish passport and I always represented Finland, but I always felt like I didn't really fit in because I grew up in Estonia. They always told me that I'm not Finnish enough. I also speak Swedish, which is the second national language. In Estonia, I really didn't fit in because I was playing for Finland. So of course they didn't really want to support me there because I didn't give the glory to the country. And living in other countries, in Spain, in Portugal, of course, I was also the foreigner. So with all of these struggles combined, by like mid 2019, I was really thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I struggling through pain, through the financials and loneliness? And unfortunately, I just had to quit at 24. I actually then met my boyfriend and I moved to Germany pretty quickly just because I was in between careers and I didn't really have a job or anything to do. And when I came to Germany, coaching felt like the most logical next step. It was easy for me to get a job, but very quickly I realized that coaching was just not my passion. It's very different from being a tennis player yourself. And generally, I just felt like I was kind of over the tennis world. I wanted to try something else and, test out life. And I just decided to walk away one day. I sold all of my rackets, I sold all of my clothing, and I said, it's enough. I shifted into business and corporate life. I actually made an online degree in business administration and I started working in different German companies. Mentally, I must admit, now looking back, I was really burned out and also ashamed. My dream since I was 6 years old was always to get into the top 100, and since I failed at that, I felt like I was a complete failure and I just didn't want to talk about tennis. And although now looking back, I think I reached so many amazing things by such a young age, at that time it just felt like I have nothing to offer. I was a failure and I don't know, I was just really over talking tennis and I just didn't want to associate with it in any way. And that's really where my life after tennis started. I took a long 6-year break. I haven't really played a lot of tennis since then. And a lot of people that know me from those times are actually quite shocked about it because I used to be very, very passionate. But honestly, tennis never really stopped following me, and new people that met me or old people, as soon as I told them that I played tennis professionally, they just followed me. And actually, I was always known as the tennis girl to everyone. Honestly, at one point, it really annoyed me because I was like, I'm more than just tennis. But now I think I'm ready to embrace this new kind of path, a new role in tennis that I can offer. And that's why I also decided to name the channel The Tennis Girl. I tried new paths, I worked in the corporate life, I traveled a lot, I had fun, I stepped away from my athlete life, but it always kept popping back and I kept fighting against it. But I think now I'm finally ready to embrace again my athlete life, my expertise, and I've done a full circle in the self-discovery in kind of my quarter life crisis, and I am ready to come back. So I'm coming back to YouTube, to tennis, but on my own terms. I'm not a tennis player anymore, and I'm by far not in my best shape, and I'm probably not going to be showing a lot of me playing tennis, but I do have an expert opinion, and I think I also have a fresh perspective being out of the sport for a little while. So what can you expect on this new tennis channel? My behind the scenes stories of a real life ex-tennis player who has so many stories to share, commentary and reactions on current tennis events, some coaching advice and technique tips, definitely lots of tennis fashion, tennis mindset, and general tennis lifestyle. Especially now, I feel like tennis is such a popular sport and it's very aesthetic, so I want to add my feminine perspective to it. And finally, a real look at the sport with no filters, with real life experience. I have lived this life and I am finally ready to share it. So if you are a tennis lover, an athlete, or just someone who loves real stories, then hit that subscribe button because there's a lot of interesting tennis content coming up. I'm super excited for it, and that's the best way you can support me and help me grow, because I am starting this from 0 subscribers, so it's a long journey ahead of me. And stay tuned for lots of interesting tennis content coming. Thanks a lot for your support, and I will see you again in the next video.